Hi everyone. So welcome to week 6, which is the second last week. So well done on making it thus far. I hope you're still enjoying the course. Yeah, I hope you can see the light, if you could call it that, soon. Um, so this is week 6, which is budgetary control, um, and this will be chapter 12 in your textbook. Um, Again, the notes is sufficient to prepare you for the final exam. However, I do encourage you to read the textbook. It just gives extra insight, which you may not get from the notes or from the videos. And again, there will be multiple choice questions, and there's a long question which will be vital to attempt if you want to prepare for the final exam. So onto the notes. The objectives for this topic is we're going to explain the objective of budgeting, what is the principal budgeting factor, the steps in the budgeting process, and then we're going to end by preparing a production budget. So the purpose of budgeting has very broad purposes, and it's actually so much more complex than what people often realize, and but so useful and covers so many aspects than what people often realize. So generally, budgets are used for the following purposes. It's used to plan operations, coordinate activities of the organization, communicate the plan to those responsible for the plan, for implementation of the plan, to motivate managers to pursue goals, to control activities, and for performance evaluation. And so, as you can see, a budget is very important. It's a simple tool, but it's important because it has all of these purposes. And we're just going to briefly touch over those purposes. So planning, budget has a time frame, and it's usually short term, and it must be aligned with strategic goals of the company. The important thing to remember is that a budget is uncertain because nobody has a crystal ball. A budget is essentially a forecast, and so it's important to try and prepare a budget as close to realistic as possible, but just bear in mind that a budget obviously will never be actual because no one knows has a crystal ball. Just in terms of planning, budgets can be 12 months, it can be 3 months, it can be 9 months, it can be biannually. Budget has a motivation perspective, both positive and negative. I mean, it can be positive if people stick within budget and budget's realistic, they can get incentives. It can also be demotivating whenever the budget is unrealistic. And so that's effectively the performance evaluation aspect of budgets, and then the basis for determining the numbers that goes into the budget. So there are 3 methods: incremental, activity, and zero-based. Now, incremental is what happens in most organizations. You take last year's budget and you basically just either use it as is or make some slight adjustments like inflation to arrive at this year's budget. So this is the most commonly used. It's the easiest way to prepare a budget. The major disadvantage of using incremental budgeting is that if last year's budget was effectively incorrect or there were inefficiencies and you use incremental budgeting, you are just perpetuating this ineffective or inefficiencies every year in the new budget if you're using incremental budgeting. Then I'll come to activity-based budgeting last. Zero-based budgeting is this form of budgeting is extremely time-consuming, as it basically means you start from a zero base. Everything starts from scratch. You take a budget from scratch. There's no basis. It's basically from scratch we determine what we need, and this is extremely time consuming. Which is effectively the opposite of incremental, because this takes so much time, and incremental can be done usually within a matter of minutes, depending on the size of the organization. And then the best form of budgeting is activity-based budgeting, which flows on from week 5, which is activity-based costing. And really what we say is we identify the activity drivers within the organization, and based on the activity drivers we're going to prepare the budget rather than a cost. So we prepare a budget rather than based on activities rather than costs. And it is the more accurate and the more complete approach is activity-based budgeting. However, the level of expertise needed to do activity-based costing is so much more sophisticated than you would need for incremental budgeting or even zero-based budgeting. Alright, so I'm going to end this video there for now. When I come back, we'll do the comparison between traditional and zero-based budgeting. Alright.